Alright people, Mike Salden here again. Welcome back to another video. Today I just want to talk about my recent playthrough of Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. It's the first time I've played the game since 2018 when the PS4 remaster came out. Really, I'd never played the Bitterblack expansion even when I got the game back in 2018. For some reason I just did the main storyline and then I sort of had other games to play, so I never got around to it. But this time I actually really got into the game a lot more than I did back in the day. Like, I always enjoyed the game, but I never grinded up to a really high level and went off into like some of the dungeons with like the harder enemies and stuff like that. But I decided I wanted to platinum the game this time, so it really forced me to do everything in the game, and I really couldn't believe how great Bitterblack was as an expansion. It was just a really foreboding, creepy, atmospheric place, and I really got sucked into just running that dungeon over and over again while I was trying to grind to level 200 as part of the platinum requirements. And basically Bitterblack it's a really long dungeon crawl. You've got about 5 or 6 levels of the dungeon you have to go through, and it's filled with like really hard enemies and super bosses. And once you've cleared the dungeon once, it resets itself and remixes the rooms so that the enemy spawns are different and you get different bosses that can spawn. Like one time you'll go into a room and there'll be like 2 fire drakes in there as the boss. Another time you'll go in there and it'll be a chimera as the boss, or you'll go in there and there'll be like 3 or 4 of the Minotaur enemies. They're called Eliminators in this, and it was just a really great expansion and a really cool place to grind. And also there was this super boss who acts a bit like Mr. X from Resident Evil, and it's basically just the Grim Reaper. Like, the literal death is following you while you're on Bitterblack. He can just show up anywhere at any time. He scared me quite a few times. The worst one was probably when I was just going into the sewers, the sewer part of Bitterblack, and he just like sort of crept out of the darkness. I wasn't expecting it. Actually, I did let out a bit of a cry for help during that moment. So yeah, it was really creepy and atmospheric, this expansion, and you can really tell it's from Capcom, and the people who created it are like, they're probably fans of Resident Evil because it gets made at their company as well. And there were also things like a safe room that shows up on different levels of the dungeon, where you can go in there, you can drop off your items, you can save, you can heal up, you can trade with this sort of shady character who's a bit like the merchant from Resident Evil 4. But if you want to purify items, which is a system to do with the loot drops on Bitterblack, you get all these rare items, but they're initially cursed when you first pick them up. And to purify the item and see what gear you got, it's kind of like a loot box system. You have no idea what you've got until you purify it, and you have to spend rift crystals in order to purify this gear. You don't have to spend any real money, it's all in game. Thankfully, this was originally from 2012, before loot boxes and microtransactions were that huge yet. This was actually a fun way to do that kind of mechanic of unlocking random gear. You have to go back to the entrance of Bitterblack and speak to the NPC lady who's there, and she'll purify your items, and you get all this like amazing gear and weapons that you really do need if you're gonna like complete the Bitterblack and defeat all the bosses, especially the final main boss in his true form. Because you beat him the first time and then you have to go through again, and once you get to him the second time, then you fight his like true form, and you really want the high level gear once you've done that. So that was another reason to really keep grinding Bitterblack Isle, and I thought it was really well designed, and I can't believe I've went this long without playing it properly before, because in the past I think I always finished the main game, which is quite long in itself, and I was always about level 50 or 60 or so, and then I sort of would go over to Bitterblack Isle, go into the first few rooms, and I would just get my ass beat because I hadn't properly leveled up weapons or gear, and I hadn't really summoned the best pawns that I could possibly summon at that point. And there was always other games coming out, so I never went fully into Bitterblack Isle. But this time I did, and again I was blown away by how good this expansion really was. Another reason I went back to Dragon's Dogma is because, of course, Dragon's Dogma 2 is on the way. And after this playthrough, getting the platinum and seeing how much they'd really improved just from making an expansion from the original game, how much like the team who were responsible for this, they've probably been thinking of ideas for the past 10 years before this game got greenlit, Dragon's Dogma 2, and I think it's going to be a really great game, and I just want to recommend anyone who like tried Dragon's Dogma, maybe couldn't get into it, give it another go, and especially if you like hard games, like the Souls games. This isn't exactly the combat of the Souls series or anything, but it does have a lot of challenge to it, especially if you're under leveled and you like try to go to Bitterblack Isle at like level 10 or something. You are gonna have a really hard time, but maybe that's what you're after. And if you bounced off the game before, give it another go and try to get to Bitterblack Isle at a really decent level. And I think the way Bitterblack Isle was structured, with like how it's built to be run through like multiple times, it was almost like a roguelike in certain ways. Like it was kind of reminded me of Hades, but instead of like ascending up levels to get out of hell, you were descending further and further through levels down into the deepest part of the dungeon, and you always had a boss to fight before you could get to the next level of the dungeon. And the enemies, the rooms remix themselves, the gear you get remixes itself, so you're never getting the same stuff twice once you go through it. You do eventually get repeats of the gear, but it takes quite a while for that to happen, and there's always something like really cool for you to unlock from some of the cursed items. Like I got the best staff in the game, at least I think it was the most powerful staff. It was the Hallowed Dragon staff, and then I think there was a Sanguine staff or something like that, which I also unlocked on Bitterblack Isle. I got the best like cloak, the Hellfire cloak I think it was called. I got some really good headgear, this like face mask, and all these grave items they were called I think, and they were really powerful. Once you did Bitterblack Isle, I had to do a hard mode playthrough for the platinum, and you can just go into New Game Plus and do hard mode with all these like amazing weapons, and it kind of trivializes hard mode, but it felt like a nice reward for all the grinding and stuff I'd done on Bitterblack Isle. And yeah, I really enjoyed this game, and I really enjoyed this expansion, and I can't believe that I waited so long to go through it properly, and I just really want to recommend it to people. If you like RPGs, if you like dark fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons, Baldur's Gate just came out. If you're looking for another really dark fantasy world to get into, then I would definitely recommend Baldur's Gate. Uh, or I'd recommend Dragon's Dogma if you've played Baldur's Gate and you want more. It's not so much as heavy on the story as Baldur's Gate, but it's got all those similar like monster designs and enemy types, and just all classic fantasy creatures for you to fight. And yeah, it's just a great game, and I can't wait for Dragon's Dogma 2. So yeah, thanks for watching, people, and I'll see you again next time with another video.